how's it going? We got transfer cases all cleaned up and painted, all the cases anyway. Tail housing's up on the bench, but yeah, took a little longer than expected. We unfortunately had a loss of a very close friend, so that kind of took up a couple weeks. I had to get a different blind hole bearing puller kit, so that took a few days. Getting everything cleaned up with the sandblaster and painted took a few days, so yeah, it's been about a month and a half, I think, since the last video came up. So just a lot of stuff came up, a lot of stuff happened, but we're going back together starting today. I don't know if I'll finish it, but we're going. Everything came out pretty easy, or pretty good. Cleaned up real easy. Not too bad. Okay, starting with this rear housing, we need to put a bearing into here. We don't want to put sealer or the rear cover on just yet because there's a snap ring that goes on this shaft right here. So that will be one of the last things to go on. So yeah, we'll get this bearing set in here. Could use a block of wood, a big enough socket. I actually have bearing installers, so I'll be using that because this just sits down flush until it stops. So nothing too crazy there. Alright, that bearing is installed. It doesn't go completely flush. I did verify that the old one did stick out just a little bit too. So just goes until it seats down on that step down there, and that's that bearing. So then from there we got more bearings to put in the cases, figure out which one goes next, and we'll keep going. Alright, so there's a couple bearings, so we can go ahead and start installing. We got the little pocket bearing down inside our little stub nose shaft there, and also this bearing in our rear case. And those two bearings are what I had to get this other kit for. I'll put a link to it down in the description. It's just off Amazon. It's like 60 bucks. So we'll get those smacked in their holes and see what's next. Alright, there's that guy seated in that little stub shaft. And then our pocket bearing is also seated in there. Alright, moving on to our front case now. We got our big bearing, which the new one comes with this snap ring already set on it. So we just gotta tap it in until it seats up against that snap ring, and this one we'll flip the case back over and tap in, and then it has that snap ring on the back side of that bearing as well. Okay, so we got that bearing in there and the snap ring on the back side of it. This guy sit down, we cleaned off that seal surface, cleaned off the sealing surface here, put in our seal for that cover, put in our seal for our tail shaft cover, put in our seal here as well. So all of our seals are done. So now we just got to get all of our internals put back in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to throw in there is our Planetary and our stub nose shaft. In the disassemble video, I didn't really do a good job of explaining how this comes apart. So going back together, you got two of these plastic spacers, which the new kit does have these in it. So those will drop down into there. Then your stub shaft, go and sit down on those plastic spacers, bushings, and you have this plate here, and that'll go down into your case. Alright, so I'm not sure how I'm gonna cut all this together. I forgot about that big bearing seating onto our stub nose shaft here, so gotta take that. I had to take that back out. We're gonna have to get the Planetary and that sitting in there, and then put that bearing down on top of that to get that to seat. Otherwise you're not gonna be able to make sure this plate is down in the carrier properly. So not sure how I'm going to cut this back together unless I just let it all run chronologically, and hopefully people watch the video all the way through before they go tackling it step by step, because yeah, I had a lot in between taking this apart and put it back together, so we're trying to remember things. Alright, so I got that Planetary and the stub nose sitting in there, got it sitting on a block of wood. I'm going to get that bearing back down in there along with the snap ring, that way that'll stay held in there. The main concern really is just holding that metal plate, and then the Planetary is going to be pretty easy, just make sure it stays in there by hand. So we'll get that done. Okay, so we got the bearing seated down until that snap ring groove was available on the stub shaft. This still sits up a little bit. It will sit down once everything's moved back into place. Alright, so next is going to be our plate, our pawl plate, with your detent notches down towards that detent plug hole. And then our little shaft here with the arm on it to wiggle and line up with everything. Try to set it in a slot here. There we go. and that'll do whatever it's got to do there. So everything's lined up there. We'll keep moving on. Went ahead and threw our detent plunger in there. Alright, next thing's kind of a juggling act. Gotta kind of get both of your shafts kind of halfway started. Get your chain on both of your gears here. Keep this rod lined up going all the way back. Keep the fork on there, obviously. And then it's kind of a wiggling and back and forth between getting this shaft all the way forward and this guy all the way seated. But you want to make sure that your chain is nice and straight between your two gears. That's the important part. And the part where it seemed like it was getting bound up and not being straight was getting this shaft all the way down into the Planetary there. So, and there we go. That's pretty much that entire side of the case done. Alright, after checking enough times to start questioning your own sanity to make sure that you have all your internals in, put your sealer on your I did it on the back case since it's the lighter one. Put your sealer on, and then make sure your oil pump pickup tube and everything stays in. And also kind of a juggling act on this. You gotta try to get your splines lined up on your oil pump here, and then also, you know, not screw up your sealer. Get lined up with this shaft, which then you're also fighting spring pressure on there, and then also make sure that your bearing for your small shaft also lines up. So again, bit of a juggling act, but it's not too bad. You can get it done. All right, it's the next day. Got this flange put on. Just now we got our linkage there sandblasted and got some primer setting on it. So yeah, flange. Next thing, I'm gonna go ahead and throw on this front cover, and we'll be done with this side pretty much, besides our switch here, and then obviously that linkage. But that's just the one nut on there, so that's not too big of a deal. There's this whole front end put together. Got the sealer on our front plate here. That guy's on, like I already covered. That guy's working as it should. Got it 2-wheel now. That way, ideally I remember where to put that linkage on whenever this is going back in the truck. Got our little switch on here, so we'll go ahead and just all that's left really is our speed wheel, that rear housing, and then the tail housing. A couple snap rings. We'll get it done. Okay, so here we are, turn around to the back, got this surface cleaned up. I really should have taped off all these sealing surfaces before I painted everything. Wasn't thinking about it at the time, but it is what it is. I'll just have to touch up some spots where the brushes and everything scraped. Not a big deal, it'll be fine. So yeah, on the back shaft here, we go snap ring, speed sensor wheel, snap ring, going into that area. And this guy goes on with our sealer. And then this snap ring will go outside where that bearing sits. Then our final housing gets some more sealer, 4 more bolts, and we're done. And there's our speed sensor wheel, nice and secure. Next we'll throw the sealer onto there and get him bolted on. There is this housing with the snap ring. Next we'll throw on our final tail housing, and don't forget your speed sensor. Alright, there she is, all put back together, sealed up, sealer's drying. I'll probably clean up the squish out once everything's dried, because like up here on the 2 case halves it kind of peels off if I can get a better grip on it. So yeah, like this guy, just peels off nice and clean. So I'll probably just wait for it all to dry before I clean any of that up. Might also just leave it, doesn't really matter to me. I know some people get upset about squish out sealant, but it's whatever. So yeah, only other thing to put on now would be the shift link, which goes right there. It's just one nut, nothing too big of a problem there to be worried about. Making sure I get it on film, and then your little paper gasket between the case and the transmission, which doesn't really seal anything, just more of a insulator. But yeah, not too bad. That's it for powertrain. Pretty much, because we got the engine, transmission, transfer case, it's all done. Front diff I went through at the old house. I mean, really I just need to paint it. So yeah, that's powertrain as far as I'm going. The rear diff is only a couple years old, so nothing to worry about there. So yeah, now we're going to be moving on to all the tedious stuff with all the mounts, bushing, steering, suspension, getting everything back together, radiator, wiring, all the tedious stuff. But yeah, probably as soon as I get the clutch set up for the transmission, I don't know. I might get the mounts for the motor first, get the motor in the truck, and then worry about the clutch. That way I can at least have the motor in there, and then all the powertrain can kind of all go in at once. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, we're done with the transfer case.